Support for Docs Outside the Box comes from Set for Life Insurance. Set for Life means set for less. Their clients get access to the largest portfolio of discounts and unisex rates available nationwide. Check them out at setforlifeinsurance.com and tell them Dr. Darko sent you.
Welcome to Docs Outside the Box podcast. This is your official show, looking inside the minds of cutting-edge and innovative doctors. Think you'll find these stories in any medical textbook? Sorry, you're getting real life insight from men and women pushing the envelope beyond medicine. Ordinary doctors doing extraordinary things. Let's start now with your host, Dr. Nee Darko.
Hey docs, are you looking to learn how to become a physician leader? Then Physician CEO is for you. Physician CEO is an accelerated business immersion program designed for physicians and developed by MBA faculty from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. So learn more at www.physician-ceo.com/DOTB. What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Docs Outside the Box. No interviews on this one. This is going to be an episode with me, as well as my special guest, my wife, my ace, Dr. Renee. What's good? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Nee. What's up, Docs Outside the Box?
So we're going to be talking about locums life and all of the things that go along with being a locums doc, but we're not going to take it from the standpoint of all the good things that you hear. We're going to talk about some of the unintended consequences, some of the unintended risks of being a locums, because we've been kind of going through it right now. And Renee has this face. She has this face that y'all can't see right now. So do you want me to explain what's going on, or do you want to talk about what's going on?
I just want to clarify that I am actually smiling, everyone.
Yeah, she wasn't smiling a couple weeks ago. But on this episode, we're going to be talking about me doing locums and, you know, some of the effects of going too hard. And we're in the midst of hustle season. We're trying to save up a significant amount of money. And we'll share about why we're doing that in another episode. But definitely are in hustle season right now, trying to save a significant amount of money. We had a long discussion about this prior to me doing this, but I'll leave it up to Dr. Renee to kind of talk about what's been going on, and then I'll kind of chime in.
Well, a lot's been going on over here in the Darko household, but as Nee mentioned, we are in the midst of what he calls hustle season. And what was our theme for this year?
The theme of this year was
I don't remember.
The theme of this year is no resolutions, just results.
Yeah, that's right. No resolutions and just results. And so when we made the theme for the year, which I promptly forgot, but now I remember exactly why we made that theme. We talked about, you know, our goal of, like Nee said, making a significant amount of money, trying to hit a number for this year for a pretty significant event that's going to be upcoming. And so when we decided that we were going to be very results focused, it really was something that we needed to figure out how it was going to affect our family for majority of this year. And so Nee has been working very, very long hours in state where we live, as well as out of state. And that's kind of, that has unintended consequences on a family. But we're definitely dealing with it. And it's not all flowers and candy, but we're making it through.
So long story short, she's not happy with how I've been working lately.
Not true.
Let's just keep it like that. She's not happy with the amount of hours that I've been putting in. So basically, I've been working anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks a month, basically the entire month. significantly hitting it hard, working at a job here as well as another job out of state, and basically just using as much as we can to kind of save up as an emergency fund. Before we went down this path, we had a long discussion, actually multiple times, talking about me doing this for maybe 3, possibly even 5 or 6 months. And the conversation was basically kind of like, look, once we get to a point where we get past the second month and the third month and it becomes really difficult, we just have to make sure we keep our mindset, keep our goal in front of us so that we know when we go through the difficult times, we can always roll back on that and say, hey, look, not much longer, but, we have the eyes on the prize. And we're kind of at that point right now. And we thought that it'd be cool to kind of share that type of that. My wife is laughing. We thought it'd be cool. We thought it'd be good to kind of share this discussion with you all, because it's important, right? Everybody talks about locums from a positive standpoint, but you rarely hear about some of the consequences of being on the road when you are, particularly when your spouse is dealing and taking care of a child, or even at the same time when your spouse is also trying to manage her professional career also. So we're going to get into that. So why don't we start with the conversations that we had before I started doing locums like crazy.
Well, first I want to say that this is not the first time that we've actually gone through this, right? So the first time that we actually went through this was about 2-3 years ago, when you were doing locums again out of state, approximately the same way, right? So Nee was working 2 weeks where we live and then 2 weeks out of state. And that was really difficult. But at that time, we were trying to hit the goal of paying off our student loans, paying for IVF. And so this is not the first time that we've gone through this. So
no student loan debt.
Right.
Sorry, not taking any more additional loans.
Right. Not taking any additional loans. And so at least we kind of have that in our bag in terms of being successful, having gone through that process and now going through it again. So it's kind of reminiscent of that particular time. Now, when we talked about doing this, obviously the stakes have changed because I'm now at home most of the days to take care of my son, as well as Nee mentioned, managing my own professional goals. And so it's definitely a different beast. Being at home alone 3 years ago was, it was lonely at times, but, I could manage. But now when I have a child and I have other professional tasks that I'm trying to engage, it becomes much more difficult. And so, as a family, we just need to make sure that while we're trying to reach those financial goals, that we're not necessarily sacrificing all the other dynamics of our family.
Okay. So the conversation that we had before was basically, look, I basically said, like, there's going to be a good significant time where I am going to be working not only here, because I have a locums job that is about 15 minutes from where we live, and then there's going to be one out of state. So I'm going to be doing some significant amount of time within state, and then there's going to be a short spurts here and there where I'll be out of short spurts, that's in quotes, when I'm out of state working. And that started in January. And so far it was okay the first month, and starting into the second month I started to hear a little bit of rumblings. But we've had this conversation at least 3 or 4 times from me prior to me starting in January, saying, look, are you sure? Are you ready? Maybe we should have another family member come up. Maybe you should go home so you can have some support. We've had those type of conversations.
Yeah, we have. And we've had even the conversation about whether or not we should travel with you. But we found that to be a little more difficult, because at that point in time, when actually we did travel with him at one point, in February, but we found that to be difficult because it was hard to get childcare, for, 10 days, while I am working on my own business ventures, I still have to run after my son. So yeah, it became a little more difficult to take those options.
Well, one piece of advice definitely I would give people is, so we got an Airbnb, which was really comfortable. It's better than getting a hotel. So in February, we got an Airbnb, and this Airbnb was really nice. It's beautiful. Has a kitchenette, so she could make meals. There was, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I would bring food home from the hospital, or even bring food from a restaurant every now and then. But living in an Airbnb is a lot better than staying in a hotel. The big issue, or one of the big issues, I think, was for me, I was on night shift the entire time. Probably the biggest mistake is that we got a studio Airbnb instead of a Airbnb that had multiple rooms. And I wasn't thinking about that. But you got to think about it. When you're coming home and you're dead tired, although there's multiple beds in this studio, when my son wants to play around, he wants to play around. So I know a lot of the working moms are like, yeah, welcome to our world and stuff, basically. Exactly. So it was difficult coming home and, playing with him and spending time with my wife for, a good time. But then when it's time to literally pass out, that proved to be really difficult because, all he has to do literally is just walk around the corner and there's daddy falling asleep or sleeping, and he would jump on the bed, and it's great. But after a while, I wasn't able to get really good sleep cycles. So that proved to be really difficult.
Yeah, that was something that we definitely didn't plan out very well, because again, it just disrupted your ability to sleep. And so then I find myself running even more after him because I'm like, you have to let your dad sleep. You have to let your dad sleep. Whereas if you were in a different room, maybe he would have been running around, but I wouldn't have to run around as much after him, because he definitely entertains himself, which is great. But sometimes he entertains himself by jumping on his father's bed. So that didn't work out very well. So if we were ever do that again, we would have to get another place where we would have potentially a bedroom or two.
Well, speaking of ever doing it again, so are you open to doing it again? Because I still have some more. We're about to have an argument on this podcast right now. I think we should do it again. So basically, all right. The trip going up there wasn't too painful. Although the second plane ride, I felt bad for the passengers. Right. Felt bad for the passengers sitting in front of us because he was screaming bloody murder at one point, and I don't know if it was just having to sit. Well, the other thing too is we didn't get separate chairs for him, right? Because he's under.
Yeah, he didn't get his own seat.
He's under 24 months, so he flies for free, and frugal Darko. I was like, all right, well, he just sit on our lap, right? And each flight is an hour long.
I warned you.
No, but each flight is an hour long. Like we got him a separate seat when we flew to Ghana. Right? Yeah. And he did great, but that's a 10-hour trip, right?
But he was also younger.
He was younger, and this is an hour flight each way, right?
I warned you.
So that wasn't too bad. The trip going there wasn't too bad. And then, getting a car with a car seat wasn't a problem. And being in an Airbnb wasn't a problem, except for the sleep wasn't the greatest. But, afterwards, we went to a Walmart. We bought a bunch of food. The food was good. I know for you, the biggest thing was obviously we're in a new state. You don't know anybody who can provide childcare, for some consistent period of time. So a lot of your professional work had to go on the back burner during that week. So that was difficult for you. I was aware of that. But
that part wouldn't have been too bad, except that, there was definitely at one point in time I had to do a webinar, and then you ended up having to take him out of the studio just so that I could do the webinar. So now I'm doing this webinar and you're taking him out, but you still have to go to work. So your sleep was disrupted, and that always concerns me when your sleep is disrupted because you work so many hours that I don't like it when you don't get enough sleep. So that's definitely one of our biggest arguments is when he doesn't get enough sleep. because he's working so much, and then he's working on the podcast, and he's working on the Locums company. And he, doesn't manage his time the way that it really should be managed because he has so many, business ventures going on. Yeah, I said it.
So, as you all know, in the previous episode, I talked about me hiring a virtual assistant. An episode that's going to be coming up pretty soon is me actually letting you all hear what it's like to work with a virtual assistant. So that should be coming up soon. It may even be before this episode comes out. But yeah, I basically was over leveraging myself, I guess, or letting my calendar be open, and anybody and everybody had access to it. There were times where I had meetings scheduled when I was post-call at like 10 in the morning or even at like 11 o'clock, when those are the times when I should be sleeping. So I learned my lesson the hard way, and I've been a lot more...
You didn't learn your lesson. You didn't learn your lesson. Your wife started yelling at you.
And so did my virtual assistant. So literally having a meeting, and I'm like, wait, I pay you. How is it that you're like yelling at me?
That's right, because my job is to take care of you, and her job is also to take care of you. So you almost got two wives there. I don't know. I'm starting to get jealous. Shout out
to Cheryl. Shout out to Cheryl, because she does a good job. Actually, she does a really good job. Actually, and so that's been one of the things that I didn't talk about earlier was, not only did my son every now and then jump on me, but there were some meetings that I had around 10 o'clock to like 1 or 2 o'clock, which didn't make any sense. Rather than have the meetings at, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon or even 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that would have been better. But, you learn. So that week went okay, but the trip back was horrible. It was a difficult trip. You want to let them know why?
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult trip back. Not because of anything that we did, but it was winter time, and we were in the Midwest, and so we had a layover in another Midwestern city. And so you know what happens? It snows. Hopefully you get on the first flight, and then hopefully you can get on the second flight. Well, we couldn't get out of Chicago. We were being told that perhaps we would get onto another flight the next night. And I'm like, I have a baby with me. I don't have much in terms of resources left for this baby, in terms of food and everything else. And so, we would have to get some food for him and do all kinds of things. And that was really grueling. So we actually ended up driving from Chicago all the way back home, which was what?
Over 8 hours.
Oh, it's definitely over 8 hours. I want to say it was closer to like 10, 11 hours that we drove, because we had to stop and, things like that. And that was painful. And the reason that we ended up driving was because Nee had to work the next day. So talking again about time management and just, part of the reasons that we have these heated discussions is what we'll call them is because, again, he stacks his schedule with these locums assignments. And, again, he doesn't get enough sleep. He works a lot, not just doing locums, but working on the locums business that we have and the podcast. And so it just becomes something that is really hard to manage after a while.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Understanding how to run a business in medicine will put you at a unique advantage in the future. Whether it's leading a hospital, practice, or starting a new venture, the Physician CEO program will put you in focus from day one. Physician CEO is an accelerated business immersion program developed by MBA faculty from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. The Physician CEO program provides an intensive MBA-style education made up of modules, with each module covering topics from leadership to entrepreneurial ventures. Because of their individualized structure, each participant leaves the program with their 1, 3, and even 5-year business plan, all designed to function in the real world. If you're a physician who is looking to start your own venture, lead your practice or department, or even start planning for succession out of medicine, then you can't afford to miss this opportunity. Class is filling up. Learn more at www.physician-ceo.com/DOTB. So yeah, so drove back, and then the next day I was working, and then also had the podcast course, which was good. That turned out really good. But just basically just busy doing a lot of different things. So some of you all may be like, whoa, this is a lot of stuff. Some of you also may be like, yeah, I can kind of relate to that. So I've learned to be a lot more stringent with my calendar. My virtual assistant, Cheryl, she does an amazing job now of making sure that when I am realistically, when I'm doing something else, that I can't do another thing. And there's enough of a buffer where, I'm not over leveraging myself or over, just giving myself too much access to people. And then next, I'm not saying no. So that's been good. So the thing that we also talked about was the job that I'm working at asked if I can take on some additional. Y'all heard that? They asked if I can take on some additional dates and out of state job, additional dates. And I called my wife and I said, hey, listen, is there any way that you can, because we share a schedule, or we share our schedules with each other, our calendars with each other. We use Google Calendar. Shout out to Google Calendar. It really helps prevent a lot of disasters. And I needed her to update when she was going to work, because she still works at another hospital doing OB work, basically as an OB hospitalist. And I needed to know when she was going to work so that if I can take on some additional dates, I know exactly what we're working with. And do you want to let them know what happened afterwards?
I said, hell no. That's what happened. Okay. This resulted in much more than a heated discussion because, his calendar is already packed.
Yeah, but I didn't think that that response was really necessary, though.
I did, but don't make me get up on this podcast episode. But yeah, that resulted in a very heated discussion because, again, Nee can work literally 14 to 16 days, out of a month in one job, and then get up and then work another 10 days potentially, or not 10, but could potentially work another 7 days out of state. So that pretty much takes up almost the entire month. And so this is a problem because, again, we are trying to hit a financial goal, but we have to remember that we have goals for our family as well. And they're not just financial. And so while I understand that he really wants to hit that mark, and he probably, if you know anything about me, he's very competitive. And so if he wants to hit a goal, he probably wants to hit the goal faster, or he wants to go above the goal. And that's fine, but you just can't do it by sacrificing time with your family. And so that was why I was really like, no, like, you cannot do any more dates. You have literally 5 days out of the month.
That's not how you said it, though.
That's not
how you said it. And it literally was just, okay, can I just see if I can do additional dates? I just wanted to see what the schedule was. And it was just like this, like,
explosive.
Yeah, it was just really explosive that I didn't think was necessary, but I don't think it's because I want to hit the goal faster. It's just that, there is a sense of sometimes as a locums, you don't want to tell people no, right? Because that's what you do as a locums. You provide work on a temporary basis. Mm-hmm. And also at the same time, they ask you to do things that are impromptu. And I agree. Like, I think that, in the whole scheme of things, you're trading time for dollars. Mm-hmm. I'm a cog. I'm a cog in this whole system, right? Mm-hmm. And if I don't work out, or if something happened to me, they just move on. I get all that stuff, know. So that's the part I understand. But I think there was a conversation that we had that, talking about not spending enough time with you, not spending enough time with my son. And my standpoint was, well, we had this discussion already. So, I'm mentally prepared for this and stuff. So, let's hear, what was your response back to that?
My true response to that was, don't take advantage of the fact that we had that discussion before. In other words, don't go overboard, right? So we could have had that discussion that, hey, this is going to be a bit of a rougher time than before. and, I'm going to be working a lot and I'm going to be putting in a lot of hours. Yes, I get that. And I support that 100%. You know that I do. But I also don't want you to go overboard in thinking like, well, she knew I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be home for a good portion of the month. So I might as well just stay out even longer, right?
Well, that's not the thought process that I had. So
I didn't say saying, that was. I'm just saying that I didn't want you to go there because you were asking to do more dates. So who's right? Come on, ladies.
So look, let's start to wrap this up a little bit, because I think we should continue this over, a couple of conversations and episodes, because this is important. People don't talk about this, what could happen, right? Because I think we calculated my hours, or at least I calculated my hours last year, and basically my hours were the equivalent of 2 full-time equivalents, basically, right? Or at least 1.5 full FTE. So for you all that don't understand that, particularly pre-medical students and medical students who are listening, what a lot of hospitals do, or if you work in private practice, they calculate your hours, and they can, based on how many hours that you work, they can determine if that is equivalent to someone being salaried, right? So how many hours would someone who's salaried or who's employed by the hospital be working, right? So if you were to take my hours that I worked through various different places, that hours that I worked basically came out to me working at 2 separate places full time.
2 job, man.
Right. And I didn't realize it. You don't realize it. If you ask most people who do locum tenens work, they don't realize it, because once you go and work, you work all these crazy hours, and you're just trying to basically make as much as you can in a short period of time, which leads me to something that I'll talk about in my next episode. I'll talk about locums mapping and revenue mapping to discuss, what's the proper way and healthy way to determine, well, if I want to make X amount of dollars, this is how I make it over the next year. So some of the things that I've learned that I need to stop, and it's actually coming up in a couple of weeks, you're not going to be happy about that, is as soon as I finish working in state, literally I have 24 hours to get to the next job out of state. You're not going to be happy about that.
And, because that's what happened last month. Last month, you literally finished out a 14-day stint with a 36-hour shift, and less than 24 hours later, you were on a plane out of state. And that infuriated me because...
You're still able to get those red bottom shoes, though.
Okay, first of all, I don't wear red bottoms.
It was good drama for the podcast episode.
Because you know me, I am very low maintenance. So all of this financial goal, I just want everybody, let the record show that this financial goal has nothing to do with financing a very lavish lifestyle from me, because I am very basic, very, very basic, and very low maintenance. But anyway, that infuriated me because I felt like, you should have had a little bit more downtime before you left. And, I'm really thankful that you are working with Cheryl. So hopefully she can catch some of those things in your schedule, which was why we had that discussion when we were which is why we had that discussion when we were out of state. And, we had the discussion because you came home post-call, had a call at 10 o'clock, and then had another call at about 1 o'clock. And I'm like, well, when are you supposed to sleep? Because you have to go back to work. And especially because one of those phone calls was not a business phone call at all. It was just a motivational, oh yeah, I just want to motivate this person. And that's great. And that's very altruistic of you, but you can't do that at the expense of your own health.
So one of the things that I would definitely tell you all is make sure that when you are doing locums work, that you definitely, keep in mind your family life, keep in mind what makes you you, right? Just because you're a locums doesn't mean that you can make yourself a cog in the wheel, right? Or a cog in the system. Like, the reason why you decided to do locums is to actually pull yourself out of that machine, pull yourself out of that whole system that just makes you feel like you're just a cog in the wheel, right? So, make sure that you are taking time for yourself. Make sure you're spending time with your family. Sometimes, money finances shouldn't, be the number one thing that you're chasing afterwards or after. And I know that I have to do a better job of making sure that when I work at one position that I'm giving myself enough time and realistic enough downtime to spend time with family, relax, and then be able to get on a plane and go someplace else and work.
I agree. Kiss, kiss.
Mm-hmm. So that's a little glimpse into how Locums affects the Darko household, how we handled it. And just to let you know, even from our standpoint, being the docs outside the box, as well as Renee being the stay-at-home OB, that we oftentimes have issues with this situation also. But is the proper word the inverse or the converse of being employed? Would be being employed. Is it the right word? The converse?
Just say the opposite.
The opposite would be being employed. And I just couldn't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, as much as this has been, just kind of a whirlwind of a year so far, I would say that I'm still glad that you're not employed, because while we're having these discussions about you working so much, the great part is that you chose to work that much. And if you were employed, you would have no choice but to work whatever hours someone else was telling you to work. So that part I definitely can't complain about. So I think in that respect, that works for us very, very much.
Okay, so the hustle season continues. We'll continue to update you all on what's going on, but this is the first episode of Locums Life with the Darkos, and letting you all know about what it's like to be to do locums in our house. So,
and we still together.
There you go. We're still together for now, right? So
we still together, not for now.
We'll see how it shows, how it happens on the next episode.
You ain't going nowhere.
All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later. Peace.
Bye.